everybody. Welcome in. I'm Friendly Neighborhood Game Master Zach Hall here checking out the Star Trek Adventures 2nd Edition free Quickstart. If you didn't know, flew under your radar. It kind of flew under my radar for a little bit too. Modifius is updating the core rules for the Star Trek Adventures game to what they're calling 2nd Edition. My understanding is that I believe Star Trek Adventures was among the first 2D20 games Modifius put out. It's popular. It's continuing to get new material, new rule books and content added onto it, and they're just updating some of the core rules to match maybe just some of the stuff they've learned as they've continued publishing more recent 2D20 games, like the Dune game and stuff like that. They say it's backwards compatible. I'm expecting small changes. I'm not even sure if I know Star Trek Adventures well enough to know exactly oh, this is a big change. But since I'm a 2D20 fan, it's been a hot minute since I've worked on it, but I've got kind of I'm trying to homebrew a Stargate setting and maybe some specific rules for the 2D20 system just for my personal use. I thought this might be good to just kind of check out and see if anything major is changing. It might be good to check out for myself, to use for other projects. And I do really like Star Trek Adventures as a game and want to be able to play more of it. But I've only checked out the core rule book and used online tools to do some character and ship building. I haven't really read a ton of the more recent content and stuff. So let's check it out. Yep, cool. 2D20. So we got a universe of possibilities, 40 plus ish page, a celestial. I wonder if they included a adventure. So probably is just looks about 20 ish pages of rule stuff. I'm white background. The core rule book was mainly printed on dark black, dark blue. Was kind of going after a next gen era LCARS design. I wonder if they're going more simple, both I'm sure it was expensive as heck to print and just not printer friendly for other folks at all. It also seems like this is not a beta, not a play test. I'm sure they play test, but it must have been internal. They didn't do a public play test of a full set or anything like that. And an event includes a short introductory adventure called the Celestial Algorithm, includes some pre-generated characters. Yep. Some basic role-playing stuff. D20s. What they aren't mentioning, D6s, the challenge dice. So I wonder if they're getting rid of it. Complete rule set will be found in the rulebook. But this is the foundation. I would imagine these are the changes. There'll be tweaks and stuff to other stuff, either waterfalling off the changes found here, or small changes of a talent needed rebalancing or something like that. But I'm not in the Star Trek Adventures community enough to know if there's super meta OP talents that need balancing, that kind of thing. It just seems like that's not really a thing that would probably come up in this game that often. There's going to be player or characters that are better at certain things than others just because of the way Star Trek works with having an ensign versus a captain. There should be mechanical benefits to be playing a more longevity character, but they do a good job of balancing it, I think. Difficulties from 0 to 5. You're an attribute and department. I don't remember a department being the term, but that makes sense because that's kind of what it is. Attributes and departments have ratings. You add the selected attribute and department ratings together to establish your target number, TN. You then roll 2d20, sometimes more. If any dice rolls equal to or under the target number, if it rolls lower, it counts as a success. The more difficult the task, the more successes are needed. Roll too high and you fail to accomplish the task. All that. Control, daring, fitness, insight, presence, reason. Those are all the same. They're rated from 7 to 12. And then departments, I don't remember what they called it now. I'm struggling to remember what they called it, but I like departments. It's very specific to Star Trek. It's a Star Trek game, and this isn't meant to be an SRD or generic sci-fi game. Command, con, engineering, security, those are all the same. We do have focuses. We've got scenes. Encounters are tightly structured scenes with conflict, divided into rounds and turns. Game Master sets up the scene. So we do have traits. They really wiggle. Traits are one of those things that I think is handled pretty differently depending on the table you're sitting at. Locations, characters, and situations all come in a variety of shapes and sizes, and they're handled in-game as traits. Each trait's a single word or short phrase which describes a single significant fact. Because a trait represents a significant fact and imposes context. These are useful for the game master in educating what is and isn't possible. Yep. As well as the players imagining the scene, figuring out what they can interact with. They don't have a specific duration, they just exist as long as that thing is true. Yep. Using darkness being replaced by brightly lit is like the classic example. Similarly, to remove a trait from a situation needs to stop being true, typically through actions of the characters. Example, Chief O'Brien and several other engineers are boarding the abandoned space station in Nor. The GM decides the station itself has the traits abandoned Cardassian station and power offline. These are both location traits. They're both facts about the location itself, and they persist while they remain true. If the engineers get the power back online, the power offline trait will disappear because it will no longer be true. And I think I talk about this a lot in my other Star Trek Adventure videos and 2D20 videos, but if this is your first exposure to Star Trek Adventures and 2D20 games, or just games that use location traits, scene traits like this, I think Fate uses traits like this. There's options on whether you are like putting traits at the forefront, or if it's just, if your group is used to it, just handling it like, well, the power is offline. Of course, you can't do that because the station's power offline. But I do think I think it's worth working in a VTT and being prepped for actually creating like a trait card for a location that you can kind of put in front of your players. Or if you're playing in person, like using index cards, whiteboard, something like that, where you can physically write out the traits. And I think it's a good way for the GM to kind of like guide the players along something. By placing a specific trait, it kind of almost is like a little bit of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and you can use it like that, which can be useful depending on your play group. Positive and negative traits doesn't necessarily say what happens when there is a positive and negative trait. Potent traits, a single trait that has the effect of many. This can be denoted by simply adding a number. Interesting that they're calling out potency traits like this quick. But like if smoke is kind of worse than just being smoke, thick smoke 2, you'd have to overcome trait, for lack of a better word, twice before the trait goes away. Tasks. Some basic RPG stuff. Attempting a task is your target number. We already talked about attributes plus departments. You can pick which dice you want to reroll. Example difficulties. Looks about right. Most tasks have a basic difficulty of 1. Yep. Factors that affect a task difficulty are commonly represented by traits in the scene, and the player should always know the difficulty of the task that you attempt. Something different for people coming to this game from others, where like in D&D, sometimes I don't reveal the DC because often using as a vibe check, which isn't really how it's intended. But I definitely got in the habit of not always sharing the DC unless I wanted to like up the friction, up the tenseness of it by like giving them exactly what they want, like needed to know, especially if it was kind of like a high DC or if it was a big roll. But in Star Trek Adventures, the player should always know what the difficulty is, because they can make decisions before rolling to help them make sure they succeed or not by like using momentum and stuff like that. And there are difficulty 0 tasks, which are great for generating momentum. We're seeing a lot of, or I've done a video on Daggerheart, the new TTRPG from Critical Role. And I know let me get my mic actually close to me. I don't know why I was so far away. A lot of new eyeballs on a non-D20, a non-D&D game, just because of who Critical Role is and the size of their audience, and then putting out their own high fantasy campaign oriented game. They have it's not based on this system, but they do have something what I think is similar, Hope and Fear, based off their own dice resolution mechanic. And I think it's very similar to Momentum and Threat. And one thing I think that game could benefit from pulling more directly from 2D20's Momentum and Threat, because I think 2D20 Star Trek Adventure specifically really handles, I love the way they handle Momentum and Threat, how it's used, how it's generated. It's different in Daggerheart, where Hope is a player PC specific resource instead of a party specific resource. And I wonder if that's the right way to go, because Threat/Fear is a GM specific. And I almost wonder if instead of making it individualized, creating a party pool of Hope like momentum is handled. Attempting a task, well, that looks right. I don't know why I start yawning when I'm recording a video and on camera doing one of these. I'm not tired, but I swear to God, I get the yawns every time I'm on camera, and I don't exactly know why. We round up. You can spend momentum to create an opportunity to buy additional dice. It's one per extra dice, and then that cost goes up by 1 every time you like add or buy an additional dice. So if you wanted to add 2 extra dice, it's 3 total. 1 for the first, 2 for the second, for a total of 3. Determination doesn't add extra dice, but it does make the existing ones better. When spending determination before rolling, the character chooses 1d20 in the pool. You don't have to roll it. It just automatically, you consider it like it rolled a 1, so it's a critical success. Then if you spend determination after rolling, you can re-roll any number of d20s in your dice pool, and we'll look at that in a second. And then few talents, stated character may reduce the cost of buying additional d20s, but they still count. Like if you have a talent that gives you a free momentum spend to get that first dice, you still have to spend 2 momentum points to get the second. It doesn't like change the fact that the second one costs 2. You get the first one for free. It doesn't reduce the cost of all by 1. Teamwork and assistance. One character is the lead, others are assistants. GM has a final say on whether a character can assist. You get 1 assistant at no cost. However, it costs 1 momentum or adds 1 threat to add each additional person. The assistants get to roll 1d20 using their own target number and their own focus, if any, to determine if they score a success. If the leader generates at least 1 success, then they also get to count any successes generated by the assistants. It doesn't matter if the assistant scored any successes if the leader doesn't, which I think I like that system a lot. Then you have opposed tasks, which is like often like in combat or moving in stealth, what have you. Reactive character rolls first to set the difficulty. They're not rolling against any specific difficulty, just counting how many successes they score, so they can't score momentum because there isn't a target number they're trying to reach and go past. Active player then makes their task roll. Difficulty of this roll is equal to the number of successes the reactive character scored. If the active character succeeds, they achieve their desired goal and can spend any momentum generated to improve the outcome as usual. But if they fail, the reactive character generates 1 momentum for each success fewer. So if the reactive player set a difficulty of 4 and the active only scored 2, reactive character gets 2 momentum, and they can spend that momentum immediately as if they had succeeded at a task. Cool. And then if in Star Trek Adventure you're trying to roll low, not rolling high, a natural 1 on a d20 is a critical success and equals 2 successes instead of just 1. But that means rolling a natural 20 is bad. It's considered a complication. It still counts as a success, but it means something negative, something bad is going to happen. In addition to you succeeding at the task you wanted to, sometimes that means you succeed at the task, but it takes longer than you wanted it to. But one thing I really like is that if you don't want there to be a complication, you can just offer the GM, hey, will you take 2 instead of adding a complication to this roll? I don't remember if that's like may or does, like if you can just decide, or if a negotiation, like the GM has to agree. It just says the complication can instead be bought off. I think if you decide, well, if you don't want to suffer consequences, or the GM doesn't want to impose a complication at this point, like there isn't an immediate complication that is in your brain as the GM, you can just be like, you know what, I'm not going to halt the story for me to sit down and think of a complication, so I'm just going to take 2 threat. So I think it just kind of happens. Then the GM can spend threat to increase the complication range, which I love this mechanic too. Instead of it just being a 1, or instead of it just being a 20 on the d20 as a complication, you can spend threat to make it a 19 or 20 or an 18 to 20. I really, really like it. That's a great way to spend threat. Comes in real handy. You can also succeed at cost. GMs can allow characters to succeed at a cost, either stating it before the task is attempted or providing the option after dice is rolled. You can choose to succeed at a task and suffer 1 automatic complication in addition to any caused by 20. They function exactly as those generated by offering a 20, including being able to remove them for 2 threat. Though the task has technically been successful, you can't spend momentum to improve the outcome. If you did that, momentum can only be spent if the task was truly successful. So you can spend momentum to create opportunities, which basically means buy d20s immediate or repeatable. You can spend 2 to establish a new trait to increase increase or decrease the potency of or remove a trait currently in play just by spending 2 momentum. Though like it still has to like work in the fiction. You can't just say in that like power is offline location trait, or really this is a trait in a scene, not in a location. The powered off state like power is offline trait for the space station, that isn't something that you can just spend momentum on. Like you're gonna have to like, there's probably like a list of tasks you would need to complete to get power back online. Star Trek Adventures has a like, doesn't have a rolled initiative, so you can spend initiative to keep the momentum on your side. It's a like alternating group initiative, which means you get to, it's the parties, you get to pick who goes, but then when you're done with that turn, it's the next parties or like the other group's turn, usually NPCs, back and forth. But you can spend 2 momentum to keep the initiative if you want to make sure 2 of your own PCs go after each other without letting somebody else go. You can spend a momentum to ask a single question about the scene. Has to be related to the task attempted, and the GM must answer truthfully, just doesn't have to give complete information. If there's no information, your character would determine. The character may answer you don't know, but they have to refund the momentum. So it's not like a risk. You get the momentum back, but you still get to ask a question, and it is repeatable. You spend 2 momentum to reduce the time it takes to complete the activity, not during an action scene, but like if you succeeded on a task really, really well, you could if you generated 2 momentum, instead of pooling it, you'd be like, I'd like to reduce the time, which means that not only did you succeed, you did it in half the time it was initially going to take because of how well you succeeded. Swift action. During your turn, you can spend 2 momentum to take an additional major action, but the difficulty of whatever that action is increased by 1, which is I really like that. Or you can just spend 1 to take an additional minor action, and you can only take once per turn. Really I just really love this system. Star Trek Adventures, I think it's the one I've interacted with the most. I love its implementation of the system, but I do just kind of just love the system in general. You can generate threat in place of spending momentum on immediate momentum spends. That means once you've rolled your dice pool, you can only spend the momentum you've generated and the momentum you have in the group pool. You can't generate threat for the game master to obtain information. So for the GMs, I'm putting myself as a GM here, I can buy additional D20s just like the party can buy additional D20s, except I do it with threat instead of momentum. I can also keep the initiative. I can spend threat to increase the complication range. I can spend threat to create a negative trait. It just must come naturally from some part of the current situation. Can cause problems with the scene or environment. If an NPC suffers a complication, you can buy it off by spending 2 threat. Basically serves as a mirror for the momentum pool. Yeah, I'm not really seeing any, I haven't seen any big changes other than the fact that I haven't seen anything about the challenge dice, D6. Players have determination, reflects the fact that the PCs are the game's protagonists. They make their own luck and shape the galaxy around them through their actions and decisions. It's basically kind of like a mechanical, like gamified plot armor, which I love, especially in a game like Star Trek, where like the show and your game and the movies are aware that these are the main characters. So it takes a lot for one of these characters to like suffer some kind of major consequence that could like shape the future of the story you're telling. So it kind of gives them this kind of out. Now, like that's not going to be for everybody, but like if you're a fan of Star Trek and wanting to replicate that, that is exactly what happens. The reason we all think about Natasha Yar is because she like is one of the few main characters in Star Trek who have died on screen. Like, and that happened in the TV show Next Generation and like early in it. Now, like there was other stuff going on, but like it was a big deal because it was one of the few to actually like died on screen. That's a big, big deal. We think about the sacrifice he made at the end of the Nemesis movie. It's a big deal because one of the characters we can count on a hand who've died on screen multiple times, technically. So it's a big deal, which is why I like determination. You begin each mission with one determination, can never have more than 3. You can only spend determination if one of your values or one of the mission's directives aligns with the action you're undertaking. That's new to me. Being able to spend determination based on a mission directive, I love that, and gonna steal that for Stargate. Like that would should work and be true in my Stargate game as well. Your values and directives bolster your resolve, allowing you to draw strength from your beliefs so you can push yourself further in battle or focus during an intense. Values can also hinder your character's judgment, making them biased or blinding them to possibilities. These situations can cause you problems, but also present opportunities to gain determination. So when you attempt a task or otherwise in a difficult situation, and one or more of your values or one of the mission directives would be helpful, you can spend determination. When you spend determination, choose one of the benefits detailed in the spends. You can spend on a moment of inspiration, on a task roll after the dice have been rolled to re-roll any number of d20s, or your perfect opportunity before any dice are rolled, but after you've purchased any extra dice to select a single d20 and set it so it counts as having rolled a 1. So you can do it either before or after. It aligns with one of your values or a mission directive, which is new and I love, or new to me and I love, and set yourself up for success. Then I believe you get that, I don't know if they talk here, but you can earn determination. It's almost like inspiration raw in D&D, though you probably shouldn't be giving it out super willy-nilly, but it's also, I've seen it used with like the GM putting determination or like a conflict of their values in front of the PC and making them choose. Where like, hey, one of your values is first one into a firefight, and a situation where a firefight could break out is presenting itself, but you aren't sure if that's the best path forward yet, but it's still your value. As a GM, I'm going to like hit you like, do you think this value would come into play? And if it does, then you earn a point of determination, but you basically like take the action that your value would kind of force you or move you to, which could be you jump into a situation making it violent when maybe it didn't need to be. Or you could say, no, I'm not going to do that. But then you start to like question your value. And I do think there is a mechanical process for that of like refused to follow through in one of your values. And like, yeah, the situation was probably better that you didn't, but if you were able to push back against it, is it really one of your core values that you hold? You might need to write a line through it and come up with a new one, which I love. I love that kind of like mechanized role playing that like the values are basically like character traits that the GM poke and prod and use to kind of create these stressful, intense moments, but based on your character and who they are as a person and ideally in role play. So in conflict, each character takes a single turn. They can attempt a single major action and several minor actions. The round ends when all characters present in the scene have taken a turn if they can. The GM chooses a character to take the first turn. It's based on the following. By default, the GM chooses a single PC to take the first turn. There may be an obvious choice based on the events that led up to the combat. If there's any uncertainty, the GM selects the PC with the highest daring to take the first turn. And then if the NPCs have an obvious reason to take the first turn, maybe they ambush the players, the GM can select an NPC to take the turn. And if there's a doubt, the GM can spend a threat to allow an NPC to take the first turn instead of choosing a PC. Once you've completed your turn, the action passes to the opposing side. You will choose a single NPC to act. Then once that NPC, I was going over that turn order group initiative type thing. So you have stress. A character can withstand a maximum amount of stress equal to their fitness attribute. Your choice of species, talents, and other factors can affect this maximum. Each time your character faces a negative consequence, you may choose to suffer stress instead. This also seems new. Stress was pretty straightforward, representation of physical and mental health. Like it was basically HP. I haven't read or seen this like choosing to suffer stress instead of a negative consequence. When you suffer stress, the severity of the consequence, usually a number of 1 to 5, tells you how much stress you must endure, and you mark that amount of stress on your stress track. If you can't endure that amount without going over your maximum, suffer what stress you can up to your max and suffer a complication representing more additional problems. If you reach your maximum stress, you become fatigued. When fatigued, pick an attribute. You fail any task using that attribute and add 1 difficulty to all other tasks. There may be circumstances which cause you to suffer stress, exposure to extreme environments, as well as physical fatigue, starvation, dehydration, sleep deprivation, poison, radiation, blah, 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 can all inflict stress at the game master's discretion. Starfleet officers and other characters lead intense, challenging, stressful lives. However, managing the stress of such a life and having ample time and opportunity to rest and recuperate is a necessary part. So a character can recover stress in several ways. Each time you recover one stress, you clear one marked space on your stress tract. If you're fatigued, you can only recover from stress by resting, or if an ally helps you. After a successful task, you can spend 2 momentum to remove 1 stress repeatable from yourself or one ally who can hear you. You can't remove more than 3 stress this way on a single task. You can rest. So you have a breather. This only takes a few minutes, and you remove 4 stress when you take a breather. A break is more significant, taking half an hour up to a couple hours. You remove 8 stress, or sleep. You remove all stress up to your normal maximum when you sleep. And you can the GM can adjust the amount of stress removed by resting depending on conditions and quality of rest. Okay. Interesting. I'm interested in this choosing to suffer stress. I wonder if that's tied into like specific PC actions or things, but like when talking about momentum or threat, there was never the opportunity of like, instead of taking a consequence, or I guess those were complications. So I just wonder what that choice is that you can make. That hasn't become obvious. No gridded battle maps in Star Trek Adventures. Is like you've got an environment, and then you have zones, and you measure based on how many zones they are away. They don't have a fixed size. They're based on features. So a forest may be divided into many small zones while it's clearing between trees, while it's clearing, so have larger zones. Larger zones convey quicker movement and easier target acquisition in open areas, while the smaller zones convey cramped conditions and short lines of sight. Individual zones often have terrain effects defined by when the character or when the GM creates them, like cover or difficult terrain, interactive objects, or hazards. Some zones may be defined more by the absence of terrain than by its presence. Some environments are enhanced by a few empty zones between obstacles. And I love zones. As a GM, prepping wise, it's so great. And I think it helps me define. I've started using, not like mechanically, but thinking about a space and a map in terms of zones in even my D&D games. Like, okay, if I was going to group these into zones, what would the zones be? What is present in this zone that a PC or NPC would know about or should know about? I'm not going to go into these super specific because not really necessary. Like, if it changed, it's minor. If we got combat actions, minor actions: aim, draw item, interact, moving up to one zone, prepare to set up for a task, stand, drop, prone. You have major actions. You can do one of these per turn, but you can also attempt a second by spending 2 momentum, and it adds to the difficulty, and you can never do more than 2. I'm interested in damage and attacks because they removed challenge dice, the D6s, which is you would roll for damage. It doesn't seem like they're doing that anymore. You select the weapon you're attacking with and the target. You must also choose whether you intend to inflict a stun or deadly injury, or if you choose to inflict a deadly injury, add 1 threat. I like that a lot, and I might steal that for Stargate. So a melee attack can be attempted any target within reach, which I think is in the same zone, basically in the same zone as you. You enter reach when you move your character into or within a zone. You can declare that they are moving into or out of reach of something. So you can, if you're moving from one zone to another, you can also say, I am moving to within reach of this specific thing. Then close is defined as the same zone you are in. Can be attempt against any target you can see. A melee attack is daring plus security with a difficulty of 1. But if they're aware of you and able to defend themselves, it becomes an opposed task. Also daring security. Ranged attack is control and security, difficulty of 2. If they have cover, it becomes an opposed task. Then you resolve. If your attack succeeded, you inflict an injury, and we'll see injuries in just a second. Counterattack. If the attack was an opposed task and the target won, then they may either move out of reach in melee or spend 2 momentum to counterattack, inflicting an injury upon you in return. Oh, tight. A character who suffers an injury may avoid injury. When you successfully hit an opponent, this is new because there used to be like a challenge dice that you would roll that would like trigger an effect, and would also be how much damage you do, and the damage, if I remember right, was like went against stress. So now that challenge dice aren't new, like the way they're handling injuries, I'm assuming damage to stress They, when you successfully hit an opponent during combat, they may become injured. Some environmental effects also come with a risk of injury. But when a character is hit by an attack or affected by a hazard, they suffer an injury. The exact nature of the injury is described as a character trait, one which represents the damage done to the character. We're not doing stress as damage anymore. It's a trait. As with any trait, this may make some actions more difficult or even impossible, depending on what the injury represents. When a character suffers an injury, the nature of the attack or hazard which caused it suggests a name. For example, a disruptor may cause a burn trait. Players or the GM may suggest a fitting alternative. The GM's ruling on this is final. All sources of injury also have a severity. It's a number usually between 1 and 5 and indicates how severe the injury is. The severity of an injury is important in a few ways. When you succeed in an attack, you may spend 2 momentum to increase the severity by 1. It's repeatable once. It can't be increased by more than 2. After a character suffers an injury, they're also defeated. A defeated character immediately falls prone and can't take any actions for the rest of the scene. Characters can recover from being defeated in a few ways. The rules for injury here primarily apply to main characters. NPCs are treated differently. A minor NPC or any supporting character don't suffer injuries. They're instantly defeated and they can't choose to avoid injury. The only difference between stun and deadly attacks against a minor NPC, that stun attacks leave them unconscious, deadly attacks kill them instantly or disintegrates them at GM discretion. A notable NPC suffers injuries as normal. They may avoid injury as PCs do, but have only the half amount of... So you can avoid the injury, which would make you defeated, by taking on stress. And notable NPCs can only do avoid injury once per scene. So if you successfully attack a notable NPC twice, they can't avoid the injury the second time. No matter what their stress level is at, they get a trait, an injured character trait. And then major NPCs are just normal. They can avoid injury by spending threat. Characters wearing armor or some other protective device have protection. When you suffer an injury, the severity is reduced by an amount equal to your protection to a minimum of 1. Stun attacks and deadly attacks. Injury caused by stun attack only lasts while you're defeated. If you stop being defeated, the stunned injury is removed at the end of your next turn. Deadly attacks may result in death. If you choose to make a deadly attack, you add 1 threat, and while you have 1 or more deadly injuries, you are defeated, you are dying, and you will die at the end of that scene if you don't receive medical attention first. But if you suffer an injury, you can avoid injury by taking stress. When you suffer an injury, you can suffer stress equal to the attack severity to ignore that injury, having ducked out of the way at the last moment, or otherwise evaded or resisted the attack. This all prevents you from being defeated by that injury as well. You can provide first aid to help defeated and injured allies. It's a daring and medicine task with a difficulty of 2. If you complete the task, the patient's no longer defeated. Alternatively, you may attempt a daring and medicine task with a difficulty equal to the injury's severity to treat an injury the patient suffered. Treated injury no longer imposes any penalty, but it is still an injury, and it will need proper medical treatment to remove entirely. And then, so complications may result in a treated injury reopening during strenuous activity, requiring the injury to be treated again. I could see that being a good consequence or a complication being rolled on either a failed or successful task. Longer term healing can't be done during combat. An injured character requires medical treatment to remove the injury completely. Normally a control in medicine with a difficulty of X and takes X hours, where X is the severity. You can add 1 to the difficulty and complication range if the injury was not treated during the scene, and then it also be modified by circumstances. If a patient has multiple injuries, treating them all at once could be treated as a challenge or even an extended task at the GM's discretion. Okay. Cool. I think I like that. I think that's pretty straightforward. I think it makes it pretty easy. It reduces the dice being rolled. Like, combat, it would be much quicker now. And taking out minor and even notable NPCs go by pretty quickly and doesn't require the player to roll additionally. I think it's probably one of the less intuitive things to explain to a new player of anytime, but maybe not. Anytime you get hit or an attack succeeds against you, you're injured and you can't be in the combat. But if you want to stay in the combat, you can avoid injury by burning stress, which I think that makes sense. Now I can see how stress getting used and being a pool, a resource pool, that's pretty cool. And here's all the combat momentum spins. Ooh, disarm. Target drops one weapon they're holding within their reach. It costs a momentum if the weapon's held in one hand. If it's two-handed, it costs 2 momentum. Then I wonder how they're gonna differentiate weapons if damage dice and like effects aren't necessarily a thing anymore. It either is melee or ranged. What type of injury it inflicts. It might have options. I guess the difference would be the severity and the size, probably. The severity of the injuries the weapon inflicts, used to determine the cost of avoiding injury and the difficulty of tasks to treat or heal the injury. The size is used for like disarming, and then some additional qualities, providing additional restrictions or benefits to the weapon's use. Then have these qualities accurate. If you perform the A minor action before making it, you can re-roll up to 2 d20s rather than one. Tight. Area of effect instead of a single target. Charge, you can scale its potency. So if you perform the prepare minor action before attacking, you can add an additional quality. Area or intense or piercing. If you choose area, severity is reduced by 1. Cumbersome. You can't attack with it unless you take the prepare action on the same turn. Debilitating. Difficulty to treat or heal is increased by 1. So the severity isn't increased, it's just really hard to heal from. You got grenades. Hidden X to conceal it, and then it tells you how to it basically becomes a trait. Intense trait, how it was referred to, with like a number to determine the severity or the difficulty of discovering it. Inaccurate, if you don't benefit from the A minor action when making an attack with that weapon. Intense, when making an attack, you can increase the severity by spending 1 instead of 2. Okay, I like how they've mechanicized, like gamified that. Then piercing, successful attack ignores protection the target has. Tight. Okay, cool. And then we've got the adventure, and then we have some pre-generated characters. It's a lot of stress. This must be Strange New Worlds-ish era. 2259. All this looks, the phaser type 2 as the ranged, stun, or deadly 4. So 4 severity. So if someone avoids injury to take on stress, that would be 4 stress. Or if they have protection of some kind, 3. And then it has the charge quality, so you could choose to make it area. Damn, that's a lot of severity. I was thinking more like 2. Commander Xanthus is a deadly 3 melee weapon. Dr. Viral. What was this cutting? Whenever Viral attempts a medicine task of difficulty 3 or more, she may spend up to 3 momentum immediate to reduce the difficulty by the number of momentum spent. However, as these latest advances are often experimental, the complication range increases by 1 for each momentum spent. Oh, that's cool. I like that talent a lot. Again, like that might be brand new, or that might just be one that I haven't seen before. That's a cool talent a lot. Looking at this combat. Mean right hook. Unarmed strike has the intense effect type. It's also tough. This is maximum stress increased by 2. Yeah, it's a crap ton. Oh, but he also does poetry. What a sweet man. I think that's basically it. Yeah, good changes, it seems. It's streamlined. Getting rid of challenge dice, and then the what seems like the new injuries system to like give the defeated status or the option to take on stress as an alternative. I think it's really streamlined. I think it removes one thing, like one complication. It removes a system of like having these D6 challenge die, but they really only kind of came up in combat. So it was like, if you didn't do combat for several sessions, which seems reasonable in a Star Trek game, you could kind of forget about it and not really like, oh wait, I have to use a D6 now. I also think they were kind of special, if I remember too. They weren't just like 1 through 6. It was like icons and stuff like that. So they're also removing, you don't need anything besides D20s now. And it probably removes a like product line that Modifius needs to try to like produce and sell, like these special challenge dice, because there's some people out there who just aren't going to play a game if they need special dice, and they don't want to have to remember what a 1 and a 2 represents, what a 3 and a 4 represents, etc. That's probably why like the Star Trek game or the Star Wars game isn't as popular just like around. Now there's like other things about it just like that are probably also keeping it from becoming even more popular. I think special dice prohibitive for most people, unless they're really, really interested. So I think this is a good move. I like the updates. I'm excited to see the actual core rulebook. I'd be interested to see how talents have kind of adjusted for both combat and medic, because it seems like the biggest change is they're in combat. But I wonder what other little changes. And I hope I didn't miss anything. I'll admit I'm not like, I'm a fanboy, but I'm not an expert. I've called out the things that seem the biggest changes: removing of the D6 for challenge dice. So introducing the injury subsystem, streamlining that whole process. Honestly, the biggest thing and the thing I like the most is adding in mission directives, and those directives being able to be like the equivalent of a value when for determination's sake. I really like that. I think that's really, really good. It's a little bit of additional work on the GM to like create a mission directive, but at the same time, that should be obvious if you're planning the mission. And I think it means that people are going to be able to use determination even more, which is good, because I think that if someone wasn't really serious about their values, or if they seemed specific, then like they might not be able to use determination at all for an entire mission, which feels bad. You should be able to use determination at least once per mission. But I think that was the goal, why they kind of opened up what you can use. I love that. So excited for this. I think this is good. I think getting a very backwards compatible but new second edition of this rulebook is great, because if the rulebook had any complaints, it was that it was really unorganized. It was difficult to find rulings because they were kind of spread out in sections that weren't super obvious, and that it was printed on really dark/black background with a lot of art on every page that made it really difficult to print. And I don't think there was ever a print-friendly PDF version for folks that like to pay less to the publisher like Modifius to get the PDF version and then print on their own to put in something like a binder that might just be easier to work with. So the design of this feels like they're going in a white background direction, which is good. It's still got lots of art that makes it feel Star Trek-y, but it wouldn't be a big, like, it wouldn't take redesigning and redoing layout for them to come out with a print-friendly version, which I hope they do. And I hope they've gotten a lot of the community's feedback on how to lay out the rulebook. They say it'll be coming out this year. I'm recording this at the beginning of May. The Quickstart just came out. The rules are done. They must just be getting printed and bound and shipped and all that kind of stuff. So maybe by Gen Con. It just seems to be when people kind of like release new products. I don't know if Modifius is like a huge Gen Con publisher, but that's in August. So and maybe it might be a little soon. Maybe pre-orders go up at Gen Con in August, delivered October. That'd be tight. I don't know though. So I like this a lot. Did you like this a lot? Do you like the changes made? Is there anything that I missed I should know about? Have you run this quick start before and have any like feedback like the community should know about? Like, let's talk about it in the comments. If you like this video, you can leave a like. If you like this kind of content, like talking about Star Trek Adventures, the 2D20 system, I'm a big fan. I don't make a ton of content, but when I do is generally in that vein. Hit the subscribe button on the channel. Doesn't cost anything to you. I don't put out a ton of content, so I'm not going to flood your subscription feed with crap you don't care about. It's a couple times a month at best. So why not subscribe so you don't miss something? And I'll absolutely do like another look at Star Trek Adventures 2E if more stuff comes out. If you're interested in the 2D20 system, if you're a Stargate fan, I've got a couple of videos talking about creating my own version of 2D20 to use in Stargate. I think I'm going to move away from doing like basically an entire rule book. I saw somebody else put out in the world just like, hey, you still need the core rulebook to work with this, but here's like my take for a specific version of this SRD. And it just kind of listed differences. And I think I'm probably going to go that direction, which is basically done. Like I already have that. I'm going to take a look at the material I've got. It's a couple months old now and maybe rework it to be less copy and pasted SRD and more just here's the link to the SRD and here's the changes or the specifics I'd make for Stargate. That might be up and around in the future too. So if you're interested, check that out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Peace.